Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands. I am a co-host joined by...
Steve Yurko, also a co-host.
Also a co-host, but I just realized Steve and I were talking when we were setting up to record, and I started going, Steve Yurko. And anyone's name who goes well with the Hot Pockets jingle is immediately a favorite person. Mine doesn't work well with it because it's Tara, because of where the emphasis is. You can be like, right. Tara Sands. It just doesn't.
2 out of the 3 of the syllables are at the start. It needs to...
Yeah, or the emphasis, where the emphasis is. Hello, thank you for tuning in to our podcast. Steve and I, this episode is not going to air for a few months, but Steve and I did just see each other in person, which was so exciting for only the second time in our lives.
Right, yeah.
He's still tall. Spoiler alert. I'm still short and he's still tall.
I'm a growing boy. I almost thought it's only the second time. It's like, well, the first, we just handed off DVDs.
We handed off Pokemon DVDs. But we were at a convention
and Foodons and Fighting Foodons.
Oh, you still have my Fighting Foodons DVD, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Okay, one day I'll get that back.
Am I going to break the seal on that? Am I going to be the first one to watch it?
You probably
yeah.
We should do a watch party of Foodons, though, so I might have to import those DVDs. Or that one DVD. And we did a 4Kids Flashback panel. The room was full. It was, you guys are the best. Thank you.
We were, just very appreciative for the turnout because,
we didn't know.
you don't know what kind of reaction something focusing on 4Kids. You don't know how that's going to go. And I would say it's pretty, it was just positive. I think, it was just very, people... Not
necessarily positive about 4Kids, but positive about wanting to know more, which was really
just,
cool.
The vibes were positive.
Yeah.
It's not, just, it wasn't like here's the 4Kids dunking hour. It was just, it felt like we were having a discussion, and it felt like people were engaged, and the questions we got, I think we got some really great questions.
Yeah, I did too. We actually ran out of time. We could have gone another half hour. We had a line of people waiting to ask their questions, and we wrote down anything we couldn't answer on the spot from the interviews we've done. We wrote down the questions so that we can try to find out the answers. But something really cool happened the next day that I was going to tell Steve about, so I figured I'd wait till we recorded. The next day I was in a panel called Women in the Industry. And
or was it that night?
Yes, it was that night. Sorry. My timeline is messed up. But so that night I had a panel called Women in the Industry. And it was for many reasons, it was a really special panel. But during it, somebody asked the question, a younger woman, and she said, hey, I'd really love to be an audio engineer. I don't see many audio engineers. And without missing a beat, before I could say it, Kari Wahlgren said, there's an amazing engineer. Her name is Susie Goldish. And Kari went off on Susie. And the best part was that right after that, see, Susie's a very private person. You can't follow, she doesn't let you follow her on Instagram or anything. So it's hard to find information about her. And I got to say, hey, you know what? You can listen to her story and her journey. We got to interview her. And hopefully for this woman, that is going to be inspirational and help her figure out her journey to becoming an audio engineer. And it was a very fulfilling moment to be able to point somebody to this thing we've done and maybe that it will help them in some way.
Right. And I don't know, it just makes me feel better about this podcast. It's not just... it's not another podcast where we're just consuming content or reacting to it. It's just really kind of delving deep into it and just having conversations about it. So
it warmed my heart in a very goopy, sappy way. So so we did that during our podcast too. When people had specific questions, we could point them to specific episodes and say, hey, for that answer, go here. If you're an aspiring writer, listen to this. So hopefully this is more than just a than the title suggests. Like I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's special. So,
I hope so. And our guest today is also special. Speaking of special. Oh, so special. So before we get to that, what is the business we should tell them about, Steve-O?
The business, is that, if you like this podcast, if you're finding it for the first time, all our information's at 4kidsflashback.com. Spell that with the number 4. Don't spell that with F-O-R. I know it's kind of alliteration.
F-O-R. I was thinking F-O-U-R.
Oh, God. I spelled it wrong.
But see, there's
I
two
told you,
different
don't spell it like
typos
that.
They could possibly type into. They could fall into typo land. I had a great typo happen this week, and I have to tell you this so fast. So when I was at the convention, I asked how far we were from the hotel, and the guy wrote back, "We have a cat that can pick you up." Now, he meant to write, "We have a car that can pick you up." But all I could imagine was this, great Totoro cat coming to pick me up. And I was like, please tell me that was not a typo.
I was picturing just a little house cat, just with a little
But then I would hurt it.
Has a little tour group flag attached to its collar, and just you follow it.
I could rock. But yeah, see, okay, I was picturing riding the cat.
I know. Oh, I just think it's whimsical just to follow a little cat around. I mean, I would.
Yeah, I like all of it. Typos are fun. And then what else?
That's our website.
That's our website. Where else can they find us?
Well, anywhere you get your podcasts, we're probably there, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Mm-hmm. But if you like the show so much and listen to this ad-free a week early, sounds appealing to you, mm-hmm. Go over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Same deal.
Yeah.
Number 4. And we are posting episodes there a week early and ad-free. And
bonus content.
Bonus content up there.
Yeah. So thank you. Your support helps us continue making this show. So if you do like this show, tell a friend, tell 4, subscribe, like, and review on Apple Podcasts. It does absolutely help us. I know it sounds silly, but we appreciate it. And you can get merch with Steve's cool logo, or that says raised by 4 kids. We have that shirt. We have a Yayo shirt. We just sold one of those.
Sold one
so far. Just go to, if you're on our website, 4Kids Flashback, just click the store or shop button, and that will take you right there. And I guess we should talk to Jonathan now.
Let's.
Okay, I think that was
that was amazing.
I told you I'm very nervous.
Yeah, you should be. Our guest today he's already sweating. His name is Jonathan Todd Ross. I was going to give him a proper professional introduction. I don't know if I can now because I'm laughing. You guys know him mostly as Prince Pumpkaboo from Pokémon. And also as Yami Merrick from Yu-Gi-Oh! Welcome to the show, Jonathan Todd Ross.
Hello everyone.
What do you have to say about Prince Pumpkaboo? Do you remember that at all?
I actually do remember. Here's the thing about Prince Pumpkaboo. Prince Pumpkaboo was pretty much the first time either of my kids cared about my job.
Oh, wow.
So they don't care about Yu-Gi-Oh! They don't care about anything
else. The over
else.
300 audiobooks that you have recorded, which I meant to also say in the introduction.
Thank you. Yes, there are a lot. They care about no, they don't care about any of those. They care about Prince Pumpkaboo. They're this is the thing.
What does Prince Pumpkaboo sound like, Jonathan?
Pumpkaboo! Pumpkaboo!
Wait a second. First of all, that was adorable. Second of all, wait, Prince Pumpkaboo is a Pokemon or a character in Pokemon? Like a person in Pokemon?
No, it's a Pokemon.
A Pokemon that has the name Prince in front of it?
He's a prince. Look, I didn't.
Wait,
I
Steve,
didn't
have you ever heard of Prince Pumpkaboo?
No, because I think that's a Gen 6 Pokemon. I think
it's a little down the road.
Yeah.
Was it 4Kids?
Down Pokemon.
Was it 4? No. It was later.
It was a little later.
Was that when you played Trubbish?
It was also when I played Trubbish.
And Weston. I'm looking at your credits. And Weston.
Weston.
So are you trying to tell me that you never worked on Pokemon at 4Kids?
No, I did work on Pokemon at 4Kids. They're just a bunch of like older, weirder roles. I was like a guy stranded on an island. You know how it was. It was like, they'd pull you into a room and they'd be like, you're this for the next 45 minutes. So like there are a bunch of those, but like, then there was like a gap, and then I came back to do some more Pokemon.
I love it.
Okay. Prince Pumpkaboo was the one that my kids were like, huh.
And do they tell their friends, like, my dad's Prince Pumpkaboo?
Yes. Really what it was is it was like career day that made my older daughter be like, oh, okay. Because I'm like, I got to bring in a Funko Pop and, and...
Right. I mean, now of Yami, not let's be clear.
Not of Pumpkaboo.
They never made.
They never made it yet.
Oh! After this podcast, the demand for Pumpkaboo. Okay, let's. I'm going to pretend I don't know things about you, and interview you like a proper person would, and go back to the beginning, to your beginnings in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Cherry Hill.
A young. So, full disclosure, like, Jonathan and I met Jonathan not through voiceover, but because my aunt knew his mom and grandma, because they went to the doctor's office she worked at. Like, so my aunt was like, do you know this guy, Jonathan Todd Ross? And I was like, oh, I think so. And you were already working at 4Kids?
That's right.
Right. Okay.
But I'd just gotten the job, I believe.
Okay. All right, but
I think we might have met. We might have met in the waiting room at Abrams, I believe.
Okay, that was a voiceover agency.
Yes.
But before that, you were a young, the star of the Cherry Hill High School musical theater program.
Stars in my eyes, song in my heart.
That's right. So you knew from a pretty young age that you wanted to have a creative life, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a big time theater kid,
Yeah.
And when you're a theater kid, they're like, "How about you do this musical?" And so that's sort of what I ended up doing, and that's what I ended up pursuing in college. And
you NYU?
I went to NYU. Yeah.
Yes. As so many people that we've interviewed have on this podcast, it's so interesting. You did theater there, so you were in one of like the intense conservatory type theater programs.
I was in the musical theater conservatory. So its intensity was of a very specific kind.
And was voiceover at all on your radar during any of this time?
No, I always like saying that it was one of those things that when it did happen, and it was pretty much like my first professional job out of school, that when it did happen, I was like, oh, this was always a dream of mine now that I'm doing it.
Right. It made sense. It added up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good combination of your skill set. I should say Jonathan is an incredible singer. So I have to ask you a question. So because we've been friends for a very long time, I went into my calendar because I've saved all this stuff. So you and I used to see a lot of movies together.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you remember any of them? Because I found in my calendar a few that we saw together.
Oh, I remember a real good one.
It
was a preview screening of The Notebook.
That's not even in here. Yes, I do remember that.
And
wow.
You and I, if I recall, had a very contrarian take at the time. I don't want to slander anyone's favorite movie.
I remember thinking there was a lot of like beard acting going on.
There's a lot of beard acting. There was a lot of smoldering.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the one that jumps out to me.
13 Going on 30 we saw together.
Oh, nice. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was Spider-Man 2, Napoleon Dynamite. Oh. I mean, we saw good stuff. And then you were in a show at the Cherry Lane Theater, right?
I was in something at the...
And on August 19th of 2004, it was called The Studio, and I saw you in it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The theater was called The Studio at Cherry Lane Theater. I don't know what the show was called.
I don't remember what I was doing I'm not sure.
But the point is that so many of the actors that we have spoken to and will speak to, it's a running theme that New York theater played a very, very big part in many of our lives. Like, I feel like, and I don't know if this is true for you, theater was what I wanted to do, and voiceovers paid the bill so I could live my theatrical dreams at night. Mm-hmm. Is that your story too?
I had all kinds of aspirations. I just wanted to do it all. And I was so happy to not be cater waitering at the time.
How long did you do that for? You did that for a little while.
Yeah. I did it for 2 years, and then I had like a run of like weird New York survival jobs, where I was a cater waiter. I was a personal assistant
to who?
For 2 years to a Broadway producer and his husband.
Oh,
they were very nice. Some real nice perks.
You close to the industry, which is actually probably
it was really fun. Yeah. Oh yeah, like it was cool to be able to I didn't get to be in the room, but I got to be in the car to pick him up from the room.
Right, the room where it happened.
I mean, kind of like the producer was working on a pretty incredible production of Long Day's Journey into Night. At the time with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Vanessa Redgrave and Brian Dan. It was incredible. So it was, like all of us, like just to be even like tangentially.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would babysit for Broadway stars' kids. Yeah. Like, and I felt like I knew them, and it was so exciting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get to New York, you do NYU now. Like, did you do like a showcase from NYU to get an agent, or were you just hustling and auditioning for everything? What was the...
I was hustling and auditioning after that. And, I know the story for me was that, we were talking about the NYU to 4Kids pipeline that I'm not, to this day, I'm not even sure exactly who it was that they called, but someone at Taj Studios called someone at my conservatory who they were like, get me 3 guys to audition in the next hour and a half.
Wow.
And
so your pager went off, I would assume.
My pager went off 212 something. And I remember going over to Taj Studios and I auditioned for Chris Collet in the morning for Ultraman. Mm-hmm. And a few hours later, I got the job and was in the booth.
Wow! You just confirmed some stuff for us because we were so sure that Ultraman recorded it for a little bit at Taj, and we couldn't figure out the timeline. So thank you.
Yeah.
So before you never auditioned for Pokémon first, Ultraman was your entry.
Ultraman was my entry, and it was the kind of thing where when you get the one job that says you're a voiceover artist, like now everyone's like, oh, okay, good. I think especially back then where there was, you get that very first validation.
Yeah.
And that led to an agency sending me out on some stuff. And then that led to, some casting directors being like, you should sign this guy. And it's like all those things, I can draw the line from there to now.
Okay, wait, I have questions. Okay, so yes. Ultraman did you know this was the company that did Pokemon when you worked for this job?
I had no idea. I did not know what Pokemon was. I had no...
What?
I didn't... No, I think I was in like my own, I was like very much Like, I'm going to go see a
you were a theater
movie
nerd
down at theater nerd and like a big time movie nerd.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was like,
this is long before you had kids too. So
oh yeah, this is yes. Yeah. This was all 2002.
This was fun, single Jonathan, who I won't go into details about, but I knew fun, single Jonathan.
It was it was a very different period of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But
no shame.
No, well, that's debatable. But yeah. So like I had no, like I didn't know anything. I didn't even I didn't know. When I got Yu-Gi-Oh, everyone was. It was like the second. It was, I guess, the second season was just starting, and it was like I didn't know what the show was.
Oh,
I didn't
right,
know
season 2
its
for
popularity. So it was no. I think I would have had the vaguest idea about Pokemon at that time.
I mean, and as a kid, you really anime in general wasn't on your radar.
No, I think beyond.
Speed Racer.
Akira and Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
I don't think I watched Speed Racer. It would have been Ghost in the Shell, like that college, like it was always on in the background. But like I had a very shallow knowledge of anime.
Wow, and Ultraman Tiga is such a weird place to start your dubbing career.
It was really fun. Well, it felt like, I mean, look, I did probably like 4 or 5 episodes, I want to say.
Do you remember who you played at all?
Yeah, I played the 2 that stick out. I played a motorcycle riding alien.
Okay. I'm writing these down so I can add them to IMDb somehow.
Oh,
okay.
Nice. And I played an evil vampire. Were the 2 that really jumped out. But it kind of had the feel like no one was watching Ultraman, but like no one was watching the dub. And I'm sure that's not true. But like, as opposed to how precise that things felt when we were doing Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of
yes.
Standards and practices and all that stuff. It, like Ultraman was like, it was very clear in the dub that they were not talking about the things that originally that we were talking about.
The changes that were being made to it.
There would it would be like people were yelling across the room their lunch orders, and I was like, I don't think that's what it was. It's a turkey sandwich.
And it was originally like stop the missile. Yeah, like something like serious.
If you love anime and D&D, check out Warlock. It's the story of me, Nova Ravenwood, a young woman born without magic who forms a pact with a mysterious being for power. Set in a fantasy world of adventure, dragons, and powerful sorcerers, the story unfolds like an anime for your ears.
And don't forget about our muscular hunk of a classmate, me, Ren. Too bad this is audio only, otherwise you could see that I'm flexing my arms off over here.
Are you seriously interrupting the ad? You moron! Sorry, we'll get out of your way.
Wait, hang on. I haven't even told them about my amazing powers. I guess I should describe myself a little bit more first. First thing, I don't wear a shirt.
Thanks, Briar! Join the quest and listen to Warlock wherever you get your podcasts. Or visit warlockpod.com for more information.
Okay, so you're doing these dubs and but you're not, I guess you're not really excited necessarily. Like it leads to some stuff that you're more excited about, but the dubs themselves are not what are so exciting to you.
Honestly, no. I was so thrilled.
Okay.
Because I was pounding the pavement as an actor, which, at that time mostly meant like non-equity shows that were of dubious quality. And, and then
So just for the people listening, equity is a theater union, the way like SAG-AFTRA is for voiceover or TV. So when Jonathan talks about these, like we were doing off Broadway. That's right. The best way to describe it. Yeah.
Right.
And our friends, we would see each other in these shows and support each other.
You were so great. Oh, well, how was the show? You were so great.
Yeah, that's it. That was exactly. Oh my God.
And so, and certainly, mid 40s, Jonathan has a different perspective on just how much money it was. 23-year-old Jonathan, it was like, how much are you paying me for an hour of my time? So it was like, I couldn't believe that there was something I was doing that was on TV. I hadn't, booked any commercials at the time or any TV work. So it was like the first time anything I did was on TV.
Megan said we were getting $40 an hour for Pokémon, which I didn't remember, but I think it went up a little bit from that.
I wouldn't quote myself. I want to say it was like 100 or 110 when I came into Ultraman.
Okay, because you came because Pokemon. I think by season 2 but I don't remember being that high. But I don't know. I was thinking maybe 75, but who knows?
It might have been. It was enough that I was very impressed with myself, and it was that thing where I couldn't believe that something I was doing was on television.
Right.
So I definitely still had some stars in my eyes about it.
Good. You should. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that it turned into that for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also it was few and far between. It was the only thing I was working on at that time for 4 or 5 months was Ultraman, and even that was, it was occasional at best.
Right. It was sporadic. Well, that was the thing with all these shows. It was sporadic, and it wasn't like simuldubs that are being done today where you knew every week. Your character might not be there, but there was a really tight schedule. We were on a tight schedule, but we didn't know what episodes they had already, or it was weird. I mean, did you feel the pressure of the time crunch when you were working on shows like Yu-Gi-Oh, or did that not translate to you?
I think it did. Well, the two things you're describing, there was the time crunch and there was the not knowing. And the time crunch, for me, what it became, when Marek first started, he was in the shadows, right? Not the Shadow Realm per se, but in the shadows, possessing people. And so it would be an hour, 2 hours of work. And then eventually as, it became, he became more prominent, it would be 8 to 10 hours for the week. And really quickly, it was evident that it was a very painful and difficult voice to do for 10 hours a week.
Oh.
And so the volume that it became at a certain point, it was almost like, oh man, can I make this last for 10 hours? Can my voice hold out, until we get to Friday? And, we work to do, to stagger the sessions and to stagger the days we would do it. But that was one of the big problems. And the other problem of not knowing was, we were at the height of Battle City, and then all the main cast is see ya, we're going to go deal with this other thing over here. And, for me, I'd been doing some smaller roles in some of the other shows, but it was all the main cast left. And I was my money.
Right. I have no job. Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy. Wait, okay, let's go back a tiny, tiny bit because I want to make sure we don't leave this stuff out because people want to know. Do you remember the actual audition?
Yes, very well. So, so Ultraman went quiet, and then a few months later, I was doing a show. I was doing a musical down the street from 4Kids, actually, called Beach Radio. And Chris Collet was at that time, I guess, had moved. I don't know the inner workings, but he left
after Ultraman. He went to. We're talking to him later this week. We'll find out.
Great. But he was the one who had brought me in to audition for Marek. And I auditioned, and I got the job, and I recorded the episode, and then a week later I found out that I lost the job in favor of another Beach Radio cast member.
No, wait, this is the most 4Kids shit ever.
I heard you talking to Eric about how like they were like, you're our second choice.
Yeah. This happened all the time. I mean, people would get replaced. They'd be like, we like it, we don't like it. Then someone else would. Wait, so someone else from your cast.
Right. So
do you
then we
want to say who, or do you not want to say who?
He's doing great now, but let's not say.
Andrew Reynolds. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
sorry.
No,
sorry, Steve. What?
It wasn't.
Do you remember what that was like? Where you
I was
working on the show at the time, and then your cast member comes in. It's like, hey, I just booked this great gig.
That's exactly it. And I don't recall if he was aware. I probably would have brought it up. It was weird. It was definitely weird. But it was much. It was much weirder a week later when they came back to me and they said, actually, like, we do want to use you, but we want to find the right voice for this guy.
Wow. I have so many. Okay, this is just the epitome of casting at 4Kids. So, so you get a congratulation. Do you remember who called you to tell you got the job? Because like that.
I don't.
Do you remember who called you to tell you didn't have the job?
Possibly no one. It might have been my Beach Radio cast member.
Wow!
But I would not testify.
That is
under
fascinating.
Oath, about any of that.
Okay,
yeah, it was,
so then.
But I was so upset. I always had slightly too thin skin to be doing this in the first place,
right.
And that was one of those moments where it hurt. But then they came back to me, and then
oh God, of course, like that's just heartbreaking. Well, and it was, you know what? Like, listen, we're used to things like that happening in this business. It was the way that things were handled there that made it even harder, I think. I mean, the truth is I probably was recasting stuff and don't even know it.
Right. All the conversations that took place that you don't know about.
Right. Megan, in her interview, said she was given a role on, I think it was Cubics. She did a few episodes and then just figured the character went away. And then a couple months later came back as the character and was told, oh, yeah, we didn't like what you did, so we brought someone else in, but they decided to take a tour, so we just figured we'd bring you back. I mean, it's just mind-blowing.
If I were going to try to spin a moral of the story for myself, I guess it would be to just always remember as an actor that no one's thinking about you nearly as much as you're thinking about them.
Yeah.
Or you're thinking about them thinking about you.
Right, yes. All of that. Well, I think in certain ways...
I think it's just a life lesson sometimes.
Right.
It is. Well, there are. I mean, I think I developed a thick skin having that as an early job. Like, I think it first of all said to me, okay, I'm replaceable. In an industry where your ego has to be pretty solid. I learned I was replaceable very early. But it also, there were enough jobs to go around. So, like there was like a core group of us doing a lot of the stuff. So it's like, okay, well, you know what? Even in voiceover in general, my feeling was always, okay, well, we're both up for this role. If my best friend gets it, I'm making her buy me lunch. Like I had to be okay. I had to be okay with that. It's sad, but it's I don't know.
But it's I think just an integral piece of the puzzle to just skipping ahead. A few years ago, when my oldest daughter was born, I took a pretty significant step back from acting proper and just focused on audiobooks. And the thing that I found when I did that was actually kind of painful to discover. was how much happier I was for other people's success. That friends that when friends or even like acquaintances that I knew were like got a Broadway show or, you know, where they would pop up on TV or a commercial. And I recognized, I was like, oh, that's great. Good for them. Where I was like, man, what must have been like going through my body previous to that?
The stress it's not, there's nothing healthy about it. It's auditioning every day. There's just no security in that, living in that angst. Oof.
Right. And just, you know, the ability to separate your personal self-worth from like whether or not you get the job, because you're hardly ever going to get the job.
Yeah.
Even, you know, it's like, you know, it's like baseball averages, like 3 out of 10 is like Hall of Fame.
Right.
You know, for your career. And like most people don't get 3 out of 10 at all.
You said something to me. I mean, I guess we were in our 20s, and I think I told you this recently. And I'll preface this by saying you and I were very close. Like, you know, this isn't something you just say. We were having a deep conversation. I think we were on a roof somewhere in the 20s in Manhattan. And I
thought
was...
you said in the 20s.
Oh, in the 20s. No, like in the 20s.
And I said to her, I said...
Well, yes, right.
You gotta be a star.
Right.
Hey, kid. We were newsies. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's good you clarified. But I was so tense that I could not relax. Like, I was so worried about my next job. And again, I was auditioning for everything I could. And you said, Tara, some people live in the past. Some people are present and live in the present. You're like, you are in the future. Like, that is all your... And I was like... And I think in the moment, I was like, yeah, good. Because I'm worried and I'm... But, like, in retrospect, wow, how unhealthy. Like... And what an astute observation from you. And, like, I should have taken it and done something different with you saying that. I'm sure you meant it to help me. And, like...
Did you take it like, that guy?
No, I took it like, yeah, that is what I'm doing. Because I'm a type A, and I am going to worry about the future. And I don't care if that means not enjoying the present. I wasn't ready to learn that lesson, but in retrospect, I speak for a living, appreciate you seeing that and saying that. And we should say things like that to our friends. And it's stuck with me many, many years. So, you know, I hope we all speak to our friends like that. And it's cool that you were in a place to see that. So... I don't know what that says, but...
I always better at seeing that kind of stuff in others than in myself.
Yeah, well, that seems like...
and I was squarely in the past. I was like, man, 4 years ago, if I had only done this...
Right. The mistakes and the,
right.
I should have done. I should have been. Okay, so you're recording Yu-Gi-Oh! You're on top of the world.
World.
You end up, your friend does not get the job. You get this is so weird that you have to then now go do the job. So,
right.
So you had a session where you had to figure out this voice.
Yeah, and their initial note was that the original voice was too much like Pegasus.
Okay.
Where, you know, it was like Pegasus filtered through like a lousy Peter Lorre impersonation where it's like, I'm going to banish you to the Shadow Realm. And they were like the melody was a little too close to Pegasus. And I don't recall how many times we recorded my first episode, including that first time. It might have been up to 4 times that we went through it, and they would send it. They would be like, "Great," and they would send it to the producers, and then they'd be like, "So close." And then, every time we went back through it, we would like add another element. So it would be it would get a little more nasal, and then it would get a little more gritty, and then it would be a little louder and more intense, and like it like grew into that. And then that final one, they were like, "That's the one."
Man. That's the first I'm hearing about playing with a voice that much. And I think it's a good voiceover lesson in general, is if the acting is there, they're willing to work with you to find this voice because you were a good actor and they were like, let's figure this out.
Well, and I really did appreciate that, especially like coming at that role a second time, where certainly things felt on very thin ice because of that initial experience. But like in retrospect, I was really appreciative of their willingness to be like, well, he's the guy, but we're going to find what's going to work.
Who were you working with on that? Because I assume it was Eric Stewart directing. In my mind, it's always been Chris, but maybe because it was season.
Accurate.
You know what? I'm lying because it was season 2. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So were there also like because we, as an actor there, there were rarely producers in the room. Like, do you remember there being producers and stuff in there with you?
I don't recall. Okay. I don't recall that there were producers. There might have been at the first couple of sessions for that first episode. Okay. But I don't recall.
Right, yeah, because again, it always just felt like us and the director and the engineer, and it was our little island.
Yeah, your own little world.
Yeah. So crazy. So you were obviously, you had graduated from the Ultraman studios where we worked at Taj, and now you were at the Big Boy Studios.
I was at the Big Boy Studio.
So crazy. And Steve, please jump in with specific Yu-Gi-Oh questions because, again, you know that show way better than I do. And we do have some fan questions we will get to.
I saw. People like Merrick. They definitely do.
People like Merrick. It's so nice.
It is nice. So, okay. So, again, I want to go back to, like, some of this vocal stuff. We were not savvy enough to pick a voice that we could sustain. So you pick this voice that you cannot sustain. Did that affect your singing and your musical?
Absolutely.
Yeah, same for me.
And I try not to be, again, I would trade.
We're bitter.
Nothing,
it's okay to be a little bit bitter.
Well, no, I would trade nothing for what I have right now. But I would also say that it really drastically changed the direction of my musical theater career because, I would have an audition on a Tuesday and it would go great. And they'd be like, great, you have a callback on Friday. And on Thursday I would have a session and then I would go in on Friday and I would just be shot. And, and there was just, it was that kind of thing where it was like, there was just nothing you could do about that. Or it would be the opposite, where I'd have a session and then the next day an audition and it wouldn't go anywhere.
Right. The little boy voices killed me. I mean, I kind of
I'm sure.
stepped back from musical theater at that. And then I started doing more plays, which actually was maybe a cool thing because I was like, oh, I don't have to be as crazy about my vocal cords. But we both probably did some damage, which...
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a shame. But again, it was on I think we advocate for ourselves very differently because we know better.
Yeah, I think I would probably just be a little more careful. I mean, even whenever they mounted G.I. Joe, I remember them being like, "Do you want to audition for Cobra Commander?" And it was like hard pass. I was like, I will not survive.
Did you work on were you on Ultimate Muscle and those other shows during that time?
So it's funny. I saw this question pop up on X.
Twitter. We don't say X here. We say Twitter.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of time, I think the answer is definitely some, and I think
the question was about someone on Twitter asked if what other shows you were working on.
Yeah, like Funky Cops, and so what do I have I have more vivid memories of things like Winx Club and Sonic. I had some slightly more substantial stuff on One Piece, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You were Sid Jones and Nobby Blow.
And Nobby Blow. And as an 80s kid, that was the one where I was like, I'm on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did it. Top of the world, ma.
I mean, your Winx Club stuff is not on, your credits are not online. Well, do you remember who you played on any of those shows?
No idea. I mean, it would be the kind of thing where they'd be like, hey, do you have an extra hour of your life to come in and be like,
okay,
fairy number 4.
Right.
But there were a bunch of fairy number 4s, and there was, and so it's funny because until it came up the other day, I had no memory of Funky Cops, and then today I was like, I think I was on Funky Cops. I don't, but maybe not. I don't.
Yeah,
I think
it's all one big blur to a lot of us. It's a shame that we didn't keep notes.
And as you say, single Jonathan was a very different Jonathan, and it did a lot of damage to my body during that phase. I was like, I know it's all a blur. That whole there's like a 6-year period that's a terrible, terrible blur.
I know, but you know what?
Where I don't remember who I was on Funky Cops.
No, but I don't blame the fun for not remembering. I think the truth is it was fast-lived. Like like you said, we jumped into the room, we recorded fast. There wasn't a lot of backstory told to us about the show.
So I don't as it being one of my, as like Marek, when I realized it was like a major role on a show that a lot of people watched. Even before that, I was pretty fresh out of school, and I was like, well, why don't you tell me about Marek?
Right, right. Like, we wanted the dirt. Yeah.
Right, like, tell me, like, where is he coming from? Why is he like this? And they were like, why don't you get in the booth and say the words?
So, like, so when you were even auditioning for this character, like, can you remember what even, because usually when you audition, sorry if I'm forgetting the terms, but usually like they'll probably, for like animation, they'll have a picture of the character.
They had the picture. They had a picture. There was like a description. There was no indication that he was like the next big bad guy after Pegasus. And also, like, having not known season 1, I would have not known what those words meant.
Right. We're finding out from the writers that they weren't given the information. It wasn't like they were keeping information from you. They didn't have it. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny. I've as much as I joke about like being a conservatory kid and wanting to do conservatory work, certainly I don't think there was anyone there. I don't think that was actually a silly request to anyone there.
It was not, no.
That, and I think that like people took that job really seriously and wanted to make it great. And, there were certain parameters that they had to follow, time parameters and standards and practices parameters that, that would have shaped our ability to be like, let's spend 2 hours talking about Marek's backstory, which we will find out 70 episodes from now.
Right.
If I'm sure people would have wanted to, if that was even remotely possible to be able to give that information, but it just wasn't. So it would have been like a little paragraph. It was a picture of Marek and like a little paragraph and his Millennium Rod. And it was like, he takes over people's minds. And like, certainly the character, I remember looking at the character and there was like a glamness there was a bigness to him. And that certainly was, as time went on, that character was nothing if not big and glam.
I'm going to ask you a question because this just re-entered my memory. And it's a shot in the dark, but this just came to me. We remember TV Guide, right? The magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Good crossword puzzle, yeah.
Did you see the TV Guide that had Marek on it?
I used it in every one of my agent mailings for the next 18 months after it came out.
Wow.
And it's funny, I realized you mentioned in that email that Tara thinks I didn't read. That I didn't read too closely, but you were like, "Oh, if you have anything that's like sort of interesting," and I actually am realizing now that that I do have that. I've still.
He's talking about a separate email I sent, but just ignor that. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Not the public email chain.
Yeah,
that's not something you sign up for with our podcast. No,
but please, if you do have any memorabilia, we love seeing that stuff.
I like my mom went to like the grocery store and just like emptied a cart, emptied all of the shelves
racks,
of their TV Guide, the racks of because that was, again, like I was 23, 24, and it was like certainly my first like professional job of that scale. And that was actually the moment where I was like, oh, people are watching this show. I also, I sound like an old man saying it, but like there wasn't the feedback loop that there is today, right? Like if I were going to be an egomaniac today, if I had something that was running, like you could be able to follow in real time people's reactions to it and their thoughts. But back then the prime audience, didn't have even the same access to the internet that they would today. Like that demographic.
Steve was one of the angry kids watching. Like by the time, like you liked Yu-Gi-Oh, right, Steve? So it was a little bit later, but Steve was one of the angry kids on early message boards.
Were you an angry kid, or were you like?
I mean, I was the target demo for like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh as they came out, but then I kept watching stuff. So, but eventually, like 4Kids started licensing some some anime based off of like mangas. I'm like, oh, I like this, but it's like, oh no, they're gonna do what they do and age it down. So then, like appreciation turned into
resentment and anger.
Yeah. So like just a full circle, I would say.
I'm glad you mentioned manga though, because I was going to ask say something and ask. The word manga was not on my radar. If you had said to me, hey, you could learn about Mokuba's backstory by reading the manga, I would have. You and I would have eaten that up.
I would have done it. I had absolutely no idea that was a thing that I would have even had access to.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, because there you go. That would, the good and the bad is that sometimes it wouldn't have followed exactly what the manga did, but it would have given you an idea of where things were going, possibly, or...
Right. It's funny because, so I know earlier I mentioned my oldest daughter who, right now I would say she's still more deeply in the Pokemon world. She's not really interested in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but she's like people have gotten her, like it's manga is like part of her vocabulary, even though she's still, she's not even 9. She's still very much, has that like catalogic knowledge of, the regions and the types and, and she hasn't expanded from that. But it's really funny seeing how, what back then I would have been like, what words are you saying to me? Like I wouldn't have known what manga even meant.
Yeah.
And that's just part of her vocabulary now, even if she's only starting to have a greater appreciation for it. The thing I like to tell myself, which I think is true, is that, we wouldn't have gotten to that point if it weren't for shows like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day that create people like Steve, who then, grows up to be like, you're ruining my favorite thing. Yeah. But I think there's value in that. Even, that arc.
Yeah, no, Steve is a professional animator, which, without getting too much into it, when we talk about it, he watched with a very different eye, I think, than a lot of kids, because he had an eye for art and story and all that stuff. We should ask I want to get to, well, listen, what I have to ask you about is Fonzie. We have to talk about Fonzie. So Jonathan and I, at a certain point, both did a little bit of a stint in Los Angeles before I moved out here permanently. And I got to see Jonathan play the Fonz in a Happy Days musical. And I know we can't really talk about this too much because no one will care, but let's just talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Gary Marshall, for those of you who explain who Gary Marshall is better than I will.
Great. So Gary Marshall is the writer, creator of a ton of seminal sitcoms, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, and the big one of them all, Happy Days. He then moved later into directing movies. The biggest of which was certainly Pretty Woman. But there was a ton of stuff, along the way for him. And, later in life, he was, I think in his early 80s when, when they were having all these, IP projects that were going on, he wrote and directed a musical of Happy Days based off his own TV show. And I was fortunate enough to do like a 6 month, like 2 separate 3-month stints playing the Fonz out at his theater in LA as they were building the show.
Yeah.
He directed it. Paul Williams, the actor and composer who wrote the music for the Muppet movie, among a ton of others, did the music. And it was a blast. It was also, if anyone out there is just like a fan of capital C comedy, it was like it was one of the most educational experiences working with him and watching him work and watching him. He encouraged a lot of like, I wouldn't say improv wasn't quite his thing, but like play on set. And you would do something and he would laugh and he'd go, "Hey, that's funny." And then he would be like, "But why don't you go do this?" And he would always find a way to make whatever your joke was like 1,000 times funnier. And it was, it was incredible to see that happen in real time from like one night to the next during the show, where he would like give you a note and like something that didn't get a laugh would get a laugh the next night.
Huh. Yeah, I was so excited to see you in that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was so much fun. It was a huge ego boost. It was very neat. Mr. Winkler did talk with me both beforehand and then came to see the show, which was very cool. And certainly one of the highlights was Gary Marshall's sister, Penny Marshall, was... she was around, if only in the shadows. She would like pass word if she thought you did a good job, or she would like pass like a note, but you would never like really interact with her. But then what was really fun about that is they had, I imagine there are a lot of people who say that they've interacted with the original Zoltar machine from Big. But they promised that was the one that was backstage. I'm sure there are more than one, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, this is the one true Zoltar. But it was very cool to like go to work every day and be like, that's,
Yeah. My memory of that show is you being very good and there being a scene revolving around a picnic blanket.
There was a picnic blanket.
But like it was like the controversy was that Fonzie was not invited to sit with the Cunninghams at the picnic.
Yeah,
we have just turned off so many people who just don't care, but that is my memory.
There was always, I think, a great effort to get stakes into that show. It was very much about Fonzie's existential crisis of like what happens after. It's funny, that was during my single man reign of terror, and I really should have taken it in a lot more. That as an object lesson, that like Fonz is like, there's got to be more to the to life than
chicks.
Than chicks.
Yeah. All right, back to the 4 kids of it all. We've really digressed. So one question we have from someone named Matt Cartelli on our Patreon page said, Marek's voice has always reminded me of a classic Saturday morning cartoon villain like Cobra Commander or Skeletor. And he wants to know if those were influences. Like, what cartoons did you watch?
100%. That's a nail on the head. Again, a lot of stuff like after the fact. I sort of recognized my inspirations for it. And as I was doing the role, and as I was like, oh wow, I'm like a Saturday morning cartoon bad guy, I was like, oh right, I'm just ripping off Skeletor. And part of that I also think is, I think especially even when I think compared to a villain like Pegasus, or an anti-hero like Bakura, that there's a smoothness to those characters, right? Like there's they can keep it inside sometimes. And I do think Marek, part of the fun of it is that there's like an evil for the sake of evilness to Marek, and that it's filled with like it's every episode there were like 7 different cues of like evil laugh with variable numbers of flaps, and like that was a fun thing. It was also like the one thing that like hardly ever hurt my voice for whatever reason. Like I could have like evil laughed all day, but certainly when I was doing it, I was thinking very directly about sitting there, and my parents are still asleep in bed, and I've like gotten myself breakfast, and it's Saturday morning, and I'm watching like Skeletor trying to defeat and fail to defeat He-Man. So 100% that's I don't think it was conscious initially, but certainly there was a moment where I realized that I was simply ripping him off.
We have another question from Dawn Bennett, who is a fellow voice actor, and wanted to know the reasoning behind pitching down Yami Marek's voice lower than the Japanese did, which we kind of covered in Finding the Voice, that it sounded like other things. But were you aware of what the Japanese sounded like?
No, I had no idea. I don't think they ever played a reference from the Japanese. And was she asking about
the Battle City?
Japanese versus Marek, or Marek versus Yami Marek?
Oh, that
a bit of both. Yeah, I think what they're saying is because obviously the Yami Marek voice is different in the dub, but it's a different kind of different because the Japanese didn't pitch it down like you guys did.
It's funny. So the part A, I would only hear the Japanese version when they would like slip up in the booth and like press the wrong track, and it'd be like, "Oh, sorry, that's other guy." And I was sort of struck that it was like pretty far apart. And it's an interesting thought experiment about like whether that's because the original text was, I think, a little more revenge driven. Like more realistic in that sense. And then who knows? And the Marek to Yami Marek, was one of those, again, one of those time is money things where like, I was just in the middle of a session and they were like, all right, something weird's going to happen. And they were like, here's Marek. Now you're going to watch what happens. There's an double evil guy who lives inside of Marek and he's going to freak out, and like, why don't you like take a minute and like think of a new voice? And having not learned my lesson at that time, like I went from like a painful voice to like, how can we make that voice more painful? So it went from like, I'm going to banish you to the Shadow Realm, to like, how can we like press harder on the chords and deepen it to like, I'm going to banish you to the Shadow Realm.
Oof.
And then it was that, and then they put a filter on top of that.
That was the next question. Matthew Voss asked about the electronic altering of the voice.
Yeah, there's definitely some, but certainly it was, we my recollection is we would go through, we would bang out Yami Marek when there was a more substantial amount of Yami Marek in the episode. We would usually knock out Yami Marek first because it hurt more, and whatever voice I had left was then easy. It felt like a breeze after that to go back to regular Marek, and it was easier for me to sustain longer sessions that way. Certainly there's probably more filter than I'm giving it credit for, but like I was definitely working in a different mode when I would do the Yami Marek.
And then a lot of people have questions about things like the chant, or if you have a favorite line or favorite moments. And we try to stay away from like those favorite questions. But if anything jumps out to you that you want to talk about.
Yeah. I really don't mean this in a tongue-in-cheek way. but I think for people who like love performing, love creativity, I don't even think it just has to be acting. You're always treating everything with a certain amount of seriousness, right? That even if the project you're engaged in is silly, even if the project you're engaged in isn't particularly worthwhile, and in this case, I'm talking about some of those off Broadway shows. I'm not talking about my work at 4Kids. You're always treating it really seriously. And there was that episode later on where it's like Marek's Oscar reel. It's like Marek, it's like the present day Battle City, Marek and Yami Marek, and then it's like flashing back to when he's 4 and then to when he's 9, and then his like double evil version pops out when he's not. So there was these like multiple versions of Marek. There was like all of that backstory, and even though it wasn't, there weren't a lot of like shocking twists in Marek's backstory. I really did appreciate that opportunity to dig into that a little bit as an actor. So I was proud of all of my work on that show, but I was especially proud of that one particular episode, which I just also thought was a ton of fun to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then again, my addled brain, of course I love the chant, and I think I think now I don't really do a tremendous amount of anime or animation, mostly by virtue of like it's really nice to sit in my basement and read books. Right. So it's not something I've actively pursued. So most of what, like, I've been thrilled to go out a couple times a year on cons. I love doing it. I hope to be able to do a lot more in the future. I know there's some pretty cool ones where we're going to get to hang out in the future.
Yes.
But so like it's funny now. I'm kind of living in nostalgia town with Marek, where it is a lot of like thinking, where people come up and they ask that question and they ask you to do the chant. And mostly, like every con I do, I get to remind myself of more of that chant, mm-hmm. Which just kind of like great. But for the most part, it's still great beast of the sky. Please hear my cry. ... Winged dragon of Ra. Like I don't remember. I'm still working on that. The ... in the middle. But with being able to meet people and they bring in the cool raw Funko Pops and to reflect on this really cool time in my life, where like it's super cool to be a bad guy who has like an evil chant. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to throw out one more, one of my favorite things about Marek is he's a real glass half full guy, which I actually don't think a lot of like bad guy types always are, mm-hmm. right? Like, so there was always this thing in like every episode where like stuff would start going wrong for Marek, and it would always be followed up with one of those "no matter." Like it's like so this guy really has like a great attitude.
No matter is a great thing to put on the end of a sentence.
Right. Yeah. Like it's like just a real it's just a great thing, a great way to live your life. It's like, there's always another move.
Right. I got this. It's like, yeah.
Right.
Like, okay, well, we foiled again, but no problem.
Foiled again. Right.
My last question I just want to tell people what you're doing today and that kind of stuff. But you and I were lucky enough to go back and reprise our roles in Shaman King. Like 15 years after the original. that was super special for me. How was that, like, that phone call for you? Like, tell people who you played and what it was like to reprise the role.
I was Kalim. And, you know, it was a voice that didn't hurt at all. It was like a very, like, cool and low voice. And, you know, for me, having largely been steeped in the world of audiobooks, it was so thrilling to be able to, like, do animation for the first time in, I don't think it was quite a decade, but it might have been like a decade. You know, even to the, you know, it was, you know, pandemic times. So it was, you know, in the safety of my basement. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get to see any of the people that, you know, were on the other end. And even ADR had changed drastically.
The way that when we talk about ADR, it's like the way we record and how we dub is very different. Mm-hmm. Well, and also they use, like, some studios use a paper script or a script that we're looking at on our screen, but the way we dubbed with that, I believe, they didn't use the band on the bottom there, did they? I can't remember.
It was the band on the bottom.
It was, yeah.
It was the band on the bottom.
We're reading as we go. It's a very different way of dubbing than 4Kids days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you know, it was the kind of thing that made me want to do a lot more of it again. It was super fun, and it, you know, and even, you know, even to go to cons and to be able to meet people who are, like, excited about, you know, the reboot.
Yeah,
it's just been really fun. It was a really wonderful experience to, like, return to and be able to get into some animation again.
So, Jonathan, you're doing what I think I always thought you would be doing, which is writing. That's a lot of what you're doing today. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Sure. I write a lot of screenplays now. And they're all slightly different genres, but they're all I would say genre with, like, a fun twist. You know, and I've been fortunate enough, I had a short film that got to go to a bunch of festivals not too long ago, called The Universe of Scotch and Haagen-Dazs, which, you know, is up on, if anyone has the Dust channel, it's available on Dust. Yeah, you know, it is something that I always really wanted to do and probably should have been doing a really long time ago. And I'm really thrilled to be getting to do it now. And it's taken me to some really cool and fun places and fun experiences.
I'm so glad you're writing. It makes me so happy. Tell people where they can find you if they want to follow you and stalk you online.
I'm still on Twitter for now at Jonathan Todd Ross, but one less S. So at Jonathan Todd Ross.
Ross, I think it would be.
And Ross, Jonathan Todd Ross. And Instagram at Jonathan Todd Ross. Okay. Are the two that I'm more frequently on.
Excellent. And make sure to tell your local.
Wait, is that right? Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I want to make sure that's right.
Check it. I'll check it too.
I want to make sure that's right.
Let's see.
Shoot.
I mean, I
think it's J Todd.
TR.
No, I think it's J Todd Ross. Darn it.
We don't know our own JT. Okay, J Todd Ross. You can follow. And we'll put, you know what? We're going to put links to this in the show notes, so you don't have to do any of this right this second.
Great.
Thank you. Make sure you tell your local conventions, like if you want to meet a specific actor like JTR, you just write to them. You can find like the contact info on convention websites and say, hey, I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh fan. Put together a reunion. The people want to meet them. And sometimes they listen. Sometimes they ignore you. But it's worth a try.
Maybe there's a chant, yeah.
They're so fun.
Maybe there's a chant. Jonathan, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go back. You were saying something. I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say I can fit like a good half of that chant on a Winged Dragon of Ra Pop. If you give me one of those tiny pens, I can't get the whole thing. I get really close.
All right,
so let your local con know.
Absolutely. You need him to write all over that Funko Pop. I feel so bad writing all over the Funko Pops because then you can't see their cute little faces.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, you want me to do on the side? And they're like, no.
That's same, girl, same. On that note, thank you, Jonathan. We'll see you soon. I don't know.
See you soon.
See you soon? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Let's hope so.
That was JTR. Yami Marek himself.
And also Marek. But mostly
and also,
Yami Marek.
Oh, right. I'll be fully honest. Okay. I had no idea.
I'm not sure sometimes if you're doing a bit or not, but because like there's Yugi and there's Yami Yugi.
And
right?
Yami Yugi. Yeah, and I've learned today sort of some things about what that means. I never knew what that voice sounded like. Because again, I don't remember from back in the day, and then I didn't watch shows I was in, so I learned a lot.
Yeah, I don't think your character. I barely ever shared a scene.
No, I don't think Mokuba and Marek had much dialogue together.
I don't think so.
No. Marek never kidnapped me, so I mean, why would I even know him?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched the series, or I forget what Mokuba was doing during that. I feel like he did get kidnapped at one point, but then he got away. Like he leveled up.
Well, like I'm trying to remember who kidnapped him because he got kidnapped multiple times.
Pegasus, yeah.
It would make sense that Marek would have had something to do with it, I guess, but I don't think it ever did.
I'm gonna fact check you.
Let's fact check it. Okay.
Yeah, you get kidnapped a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So we're back from Steve doing his research, and the conclusion he has come to is yes, Mokuba did get kidnapped a lot, which I could have told him, but not by Marek. So,
but you did escape. But the second time you got kidnapped, though, you managed to escape.
Well, I always got out. I mean, I lived.
But on your own merits.
Oh, on my own, I did.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. Good for me. No, Jonathan is just one of my favorite humans on the planet Earth, and a really talented guy. If you guys are into audiobooks at all, definitely, if you go to Audible, you can search by narrator name. So you could check out Jonathan's books. You could look for Mark Thompson's Star Wars books. You could look up my audiobooks under Tara Sands. So if they're not necessarily anime related books, but if you do enjoy the work of these people, it's kind of fun to then hear them in another medium. So check their audiobooks out for sure.
Definitely.
That's my lecture.
Yeah. for the people that don't have time to read but are always on the go. Audiobooks. Yeah,
audiobooks. Listen, I'm going to say right now, listening to a book instead of reading it is not cheating.
Thank you for saying that. I was one of those people that thought that was like, did I actually read this book?
No, it is not cheating at all. It's consuming the information, especially if it's nonfiction. You're consuming the same information. Who cares? Yeah. It's no cheating. It is. I will say that is a dilemma when narrating an audiobook. How broad do you go with characters? Because you do sometimes want there to be some of it in someone's imagination. Because that is the joy of reading, is that there's no voice imposed on you. So, like with the manga, like if you read a manga and first, and you have a very specific idea of what that is going to sound like when it gets to be a cartoon. I hate to be the actor that screws that up for you. Like, there's a little bit of pressure because of stuff like that. Has that happened to you where you've read a manga and then the voice, like I'm sure with One Piece, that's happened where that it sounds totally different than what you expected?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the Japanese version alone, there are some choices like, oh, wow, I was not expecting them to sound like this. I can't help but feel like sometimes I read things and everything's like a variation of my voice, which is kind of like, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes that's the audiobook approach, is where if you're talking as another, like, you're doing the narration,
right.
Say if you want to speak as another character, it's like a slight alteration of your voice where it's not you.
We suggest the voice.
That's great.
Yeah, and the problem is that often then they'll say, he said with his Australian accent. And then we really you can't not do that. So you have to then do a light enough version of those things so that it doesn't ruin it for the listener or the reader or whoever it is. And with kids' books, I tend to go a little bigger, but yeah, it's a little like it's a kind of dance. But or if you're someone like Mark Thompson who can just transform himself, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Listen to his books; he's just so good. His range is insane, and it's Star Wars, so
yeah,
I think you'll like it.
Sounds like his are more of like a radio drama.
I think so.
Which there were Star Wars radio dramas way back in the day. I'm surprised I never brought this up with him. I'm curious if he listened to those when he was younger. I'm willing to bet he did. Yeah.
Yeah, we can ask him on Twitter probably about that. Also, there's I think we are in some Star Wars that are actually recorded like radio dramas where it's not one narrator, it's a multicast of, I'm forgetting the names of the books, but where there's a lot of Brandon McInnes is in some of them, and like a couple. I've recommended some anime people to this director of the Star Wars books, and he's brought in some anime people. So definitely check out Star Wars audiobooks online, and I think this specific audience will dig it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm gonna say.
That's what we're gonna leave you with. Read a book.
Read a book or listen to a book.
Audibly.
Read a book audibly. Yeah. So thank you to Jonathan. He is amazing. Patreon.com/4KidsFlashback, 4KidsFlashback.com. Subscribe, rate, review. What else?
Apple Podcasts. Patreon. Like I said, if you're really liking the show and you're like, I just got to hear the next one without ads now, a week early. Or Patreon. Yeah,
and things like, listen, we should tell you too, like things like watch parties we're doing. There's bonus content on there, like videos that we can't necessarily put onto YouTube for specific reasons. There's other stuff on there. Oh, scripts. We that again, we can't just put out there, but if you're a Patreon member, you can look at some cool scripts. Definitely worth checking out. So thank you guys. Thank you, Steve. We will
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening.